As a homeschooling parent, history has always been one of my favorite subjects to do with my kids. And as they have gotten closer and closer to graduation, I have really started to look at history differently and think more about the importance of why it is that we're teaching this subject, not just the fun aspect of it, but deep down, why is it so critical that they have a firm grasp on it? So today I want to talk to you about our history program this year, Guest Hollow's Early American History, and our why it has worked so well for us, and why I feel like it's just one of the best history curriculums out there. Hey guys, welcome back to My Practically Imperfect Life. If you are finding my channel for the first time, welcome. My name's Abby. I'm a homeschooling mom. I've been homeschooling for a long time. And I have two teenagers. I have one who is a senior and getting ready to graduate this year, and another one who is a junior. And I am a huge fan of Guest Hollow and the work that they do and the curriculum programs they put out. You can go back through my videos and you will see that I mention them over and over and over again. We have used them in our homeschool many times over for science and for history subjects. And they even have language arts curriculum for younger students as well. In fact, this whole half of my bookshelf would not exist without Guest Hollow. These are all books that they have recommended as a part of their curriculum that we have purchased, we have read, and I have felt were so important that I'm just not getting rid of them. They are going to stay in my library as something that I can reference for years to come. But today specifically, I wanted to talk about our history curriculum. My son especially, we switched him over to Guest Hollow's history programs back years ago because he was just not engaging well with traditional history curriculum. You know the type I mean, where there's a textbook and you have a couple of pages for each chapter to read. There's a bunch of stuff to memorize. You take a quick quiz or a quick test, and then you move on to the next thing. And while he could spew out facts in a test, he wasn't engaging with it, at least not at the level that he needed to based on his age. And that's part of the reason why I looked for something different. I found the Guest Hollow programs. We started off doing a cultures and geography course, and I was absolutely hooked. I was like, this is perfect. This is exactly what he needed. And my daughter started to use their materials as well, and I have seen just an amazing difference in them, especially over the high school years. Now, I want to just talk briefly about what the American History program looks like for those of you who might be looking at this video and have never heard of Guest Hollow. You have no idea what I'm talking about. If you have seen my other Guest Hollow videos or you're already familiar with it, go ahead and skip forward a couple of minutes while I do this little introduction, and we'll start talking more about my why, the reason why this program has worked so well for us. But Guest Hollow's programs work very differently from traditional homeschool curriculums. Instead of having just a textbook and a test booklet, instead what they do is they provide you with something called a schedule. And every single week there is a list of different things for your student to engage with. There will be a list of books, there will be videos, there will be website links, there will be ideas for activities you can do with your students, whether that is building something, modeling something, cooking different things, field trip options. And the videos range from longer documentaries to shorter videos that engage your students depending on, where they're at with their understanding and what sort of things capture their attention. Even the book list of recommended books has a great variety depending on how your student learns, where your student's at reading level wise, and what it is that you're comfortable with purchasing. The Early American History program is one of the few Guest Hollow programs where there is not any kind of an online textbook. They have that with quite a number of their other programs, but we don't have an online textbook for this program. Instead, we have what we call our spine book. It is the book that has reading assignments every single week. We go through this book a little bit at a time, and it's sort of like the bare bones of the curriculum. It's what gives us the introduction to what it is we're learning about on that week. That book is The Patriot's Guide to United States History. I'll show a picture of it up here because my son currently has it, and I don't want to take it from him because he's working on school. But this is the book that I'm talking about. Now, this book looks quite beefy, right? And it is a big, long book, but it actually covers American history all the way from early discovery to modern times. And so this book can be utilized over 2 different years with 2 different Guest Hallow programs. So Guest Hallow has taken American history, and instead of trying to cram all of our history into one short year, which does not allow for deep diving into anything, they have split it up into 2 years. So that way you can really find out about the rich history of our country. You can really look at all of these topics in so much more depth. And so that is one of the reasons why we are using this book. So he has reading assignments from this every week. And then there is a list of lots of other book options that they recommend. They will provide a ranking for these books for you. They'll be ranked, 1 to 4. And number 1 books are the ones where it's like, hey guys, this is really like important. If you don't get any other books for this curriculum, get these ones. And then it goes down in ranking from there. But you'll see these different books in that schedule telling you what chapters or what pages to read or where to reference them. And you don't have to buy them all, right? I like to buy them all because library collection. But you can get these books from the library. You can borrow from friends. A lot of these books you can find on Audible. If your student is not a big reader and they prefer to do like a book on tape, you can do that as well. Another thing that I highly recommend if you have students who struggle with reading is consider doing read out louds. Maybe not for every single book, but you can definitely do read out louds for a lot of these books. And then in that schedule, again, it's going to show you things like the videos that you'll do. They do have a workbook that goes along with this curriculum. I just print mine out at the start of the year, spiral bind it, and then I let my student know, like, hey, we're on week 10. And he'll fill out the workbook pages for week 10 as he's doing the different reading assignments. So that is kind of the bare bones of how that curriculum works. You can look back at my Guest Hallow playlist where I kind of go through in more detail how these programs are arranged. And you can see in a lot of my day in the lives and a lot of my planning videos how it is I interact with this schedule, how it is I pick and choose things and get things arranged and what our days look like. So I recommend you check that out if you want to see this in action. But I really wanted to focus today on the why you should consider it, especially for your middle school and high school students, and why I feel like it's worked so well for us. I want to tie this into what is traditionally known as the classical education model. Now, some of you may have heard of this, and some of you might have never heard these terms, or you might have heard it and you have no idea what I'm talking about. So with classical education, they look at students as being in different stages of learning. And some of that is age-based. When your students are younger, right, when they're in that kindergarten to 6th grade stage, we say that that's the grammar stage. This is when your kids are just learning and memorizing the basics for the most part, right? You can't teach a child to analyze a book plot if the child does not yet know how to read, right? So we teach them reading basics. We teach them how to put letters together to create sounds and how words come together to make sentences and sentences come together to make paragraphs, right? We have to teach them that before we can then start to analyze things in more detail. And it's very similar when it comes to history. With younger student programs, students need to learn those basics. They need to know where countries are at. They need to know the names of different leaders. They need to know the time frames when things happen. And if you have students of different ages, you can actually utilize Guest Hallow's different age level programs for early American history. They have it for little kids and they have it for those younger elementary kids. In fact, they have all of these on their website right now. And if you're watching this the week the video releases, it's all on sale. So be sure to check it out. But you can work with your younger students and they're listening to the same type of information as some of the things your older students are listening to, but what they're going to grasp is going to be different, right? They're going to start to memorize those different things, and they need that. They need to have that base of knowledge before they can really move on and start to interact with that knowledge. And once the middle school years come, if you think about it, right, our middle school kids are naturally a little more argumentative, right? They want to know why we have to do things a certain way, why things are the way they are, the why question, right? It's all over the place. It's not just memorizing facts anymore. Now we want them to start making connections. We want them to see the cause and the effect. We want them to be able to read about something in history and apply it to things that they're seeing today. And that's really where I felt like this curriculum shines, because we are moving beyond just memorizing facts. Now we're looking at these connections. Now we are diving into the nuances of an age, right? We're not just saying, oh, this happened and this was the result. Because we know that with every conflict, with every law, with every new discovery, we know that there are effects that are positive, we know there are effects that are negative, and it's about determining, did those things balance out? Was it skewed one way or the other? Did we learn from mistakes? Did we learn from things that were successful? And how did one generation build upon what the generation before them discovered? And you're going to see that. You're going to see that happening in your student's mind as you go through this curriculum. Now, one thing I can say is that if you want to be a complete hands-off homeschooling parent, walk away now from this curriculum. It does not engage your student in that higher level of learning if you're completely hands-off. Where this curriculum will really shine is if you start to sit down and talk to your kids about it. Don't just have them read the books and fill out the workbooks and call it a day. Do a family download, right? Sit down with them once a day, once a week, over dinner, and start to ask them about the things that they're hearing, about the things that they're reading, and what their thoughts are. Ask them what connections they have made. What do you see, relationship-wise between this thing that you read about from the Revolution and what's going on in America today? And you'll be amazed, right? Your kids want to talk to you, and they will. They will start to share these things that they are learning, and just let them go. Let them talk and let them get out these ideas, and then engage in that conversation with them. Talk to them about your own observations, your own experiences. Ask probing questions, and you will really start to see your student engage in history in a brand new way. And as they are moving through these, and as they get towards those later years of high school, you'll also start to see them move into that rhetoric phase of learning. And rhetoric phase is where your students are able to put together solid arguments and solid conversations about these history topics. It's engaging in history, right? We're being able to share this information in a way that shows their wisdom and shows their level of learning. So whether or not you subscribe to the classical model of education, your kids are going through those stages naturally, and you can really start to develop that logical phase and that rhetoric phase with your kids through engaging with Guest Hollow curriculum. So I wanted to show you just a couple of things that we have been using this first half of the year with the curriculum, and some of the things that we're going to be looking ahead to, and give you, again, more of an idea on what we're really getting out of all of it. So there are quite a number of novels that are recommended as additional reading for this program, and we decided this year to forego a traditional English literature curriculum. We were going to do American literature anyways, so instead of buying a textbook where there's excerpts, I thought, well, we will just do these books, and then we'll dive into them from a literature perspective. But again, we're also making these additional connections with history. For example, he read The Scarlet Letter and The Crucible at the very beginning of the year. And there are so many great themes within these books that you can start to discuss culture, you can discuss religion, you can discuss how governments were set up in the different colonies, and what life was like for someone, and how that impacted the way that our country developed. So we were reading these early books, and then we moved into books like Last of the Mohicans. And again, that brings up a lot about our interactions with Native Americans, what was going on, what was the relationship like. Granted, it's a fiction novel, but it sparks that discussion, and then you can tie that into things you're reading from the history books as well. Now, one of the more difficult reads he had the first part of the year was A Voyage Long and Strange. This is a longer book. There was quite a lot to read about it, but it gives some wonderful historical information. Guest Hollow also provides an additional document with your purchase that kind of guides you through using this book if you choose to do it. I think it's a worthwhile book to include, but I do believe that if you're going to include this book, then you definitely need to be committed to working on it with your student. This was not one that my son would have naturally sat and gotten a lot out of on his own, simply because of the amount of content it contains. So this one really required me to kind of go through the different reading assignments with him and discuss things in more detail. Another book that was a little bit longer, but very well written in terms of understanding, was Killing England by Bill O'Reilly. This one, I think any high school age student should be able to get through this one just fine, but it talks a lot about those early American heroes, and I feel like it's just a really interesting book. He has a great way of writing. If you've never read any of his books, they're really great to read. I've quite enjoyed reading a number of them. But then there are books that are written in a different way. For example, if your student loves graphic novels, this one on Alexander Hamilton, they'd probably love. Again, it's a graphic novel, but even though it's a graphic novel, it's giving some great information. It's just giving it in a format that engages your student a little bit differently. Then I also have a whole stack of the Nathan Hale Hazardous Tales. These are all books that are recommended for this year's curriculum. We have One Dead Spy, The Underground Abductor, Alamo All-Stars, The Big Bad Ironclad, The Donner Dinner Party, and Lafayette. So these books, if you have not done any of the Nathan Hale books, these again are graphic novels. So they are perfect for engaging, I think more our young men. My daughter, oftentimes when graphic novels were assigned, she would ask to skip those because she would much prefer to read, an actual book, as she puts it, versus a graphic novel. But I think it's important to try to find different ways to engage our students in the reading. So if you have a student who maybe struggles with longer books or tends to get distracted, my one child who does have ADD, so longer reading assignments have always been a little more of a struggle, but these are the types of books he can whip through very quickly and still gather a lot of information from. But no matter which book we are on, or again, which movie or video we are watching, it's the discussion afterwards that has really helped him to grow and move into that logic phase and kind of creeping into that rhetoric phase. I love seeing that moment of understanding when they look at something and they're like, now wait a minute though, what about this? Or where they ask those why questions. War of 1812, we're fighting with Britain again, but then wait a minute, why are they one of our closest allies today? That's a perfect jumpstart to a new conversation. Or looking at Washington's farewell address, right? Pulling that as a primary source document where he gives recommendations on things that we should and should not do as a country. And then immediately seeing how most of the things he recommended were promptly ignored by future generations. And then talking about the cause and effect of that. If we had followed some of those things he suggested, how would things look differently now? How did some of the things he recommended, how would they have made things better? Would they have made things worse? Are we better off than if we had followed that advice? I mean, we're starting to really deep dive right into that information. And even looking at how our Constitution has been interpreted over time and how it has changed over time in terms of like the amendments being added and the reason why those amendments were added, why people were pushing for them, and how they impacted our society. It just gets so much more beyond, hey, I need you to know who this person is and when they lived and what they did. That's something that they are tested on in younger years. That is something you see in traditional curriculums pretty much repetitively, right? You can pull a textbook from most other curriculum companies and look at what they quiz your kids on in middle school and what they quiz the kids on in the same subject in high school. Because, right, we revisit those things. Typically, they study, for example, U.S. history in middle school, and then they'll do it later on in their high school years. And most traditional textbooks, they're doing the same thing. We need you to memorize this stuff, and then they tell you to memorize a little more, but without the analysis, without engaging that natural logic stage in their learning, without getting them to think more about the why. And that is what's so important at that age. We need to take that natural inclination to ask questions, to make connections, to want to make arguments, and we need to apply that to how we're teaching them in history. And then they will grow into that rhetoric phase where they can now make intelligent arguments with someone. Let's not raise a generation like we used to watch on Jay Leno when he would do that street walking. You remember those clips if you're my age. You remember when he would go out and he would ask basic things of people on the street about America. And sadly, many people could not answer those things. If you cannot answer those basics, those things you learned in the grammar stage, how on earth are you supposed to make intelligent arguments and have a thorough understanding of our nation and its history as an adult? So let's grow our students as learners. Let's find ways to really engage them. That is what I have gotten out of the Guest Hollow history programs. And so while I know I haven't given you a super deep dive into the curriculum itself, it is set up very similar to the other ones that I have explored. If you want to see that, check those out. I share so much more detail about that. But if you want to know from a homeschooling parent the why, this is the why. I have got 2 students who are smart and they are able to sit down and they can engage with any adult in conversation about these things, and they can make strong arguments about things. That's what I want. I want to graduate thinkers and learners. I do not want to graduate robots from my homeschool who can simply regurgitate information. I want them to be adults who can make smart decisions, who can learn from our history, and who can use that to improve things for the next generation. If you have any questions about the Guest Hollow programs, whether it's this one or any of the other ones that we have used, because we've used a lot of them, drop a comment down below. I'm happy to answer those for you. If you have any questions for either of my teens about things they have liked or disliked in their history programs, you can leave that as well, and I will have them help answer those questions. Now, don't forget, Guest Hollow is having their big annual sale. Every January, they have their big sale. This is the time of year where you can get 25% off everything in their store, including their bundles. So if you have kids of multiple ages, maybe you've got littles and you've got early elementary and you've got high schoolers, they have these wonderful bundles for American history, for early American history, where there is material that is age appropriate for your different levels. They are just studying those things kind of in an overlap, right? The different parts or the times in history, they're studying at the same time, just at their age level. So it's actually really great. It's a great way you can actually see that grammar and logic and rhetoric stages all happening in your students. It's pretty cool to see with their programs. So check it out. Check out their website, guesthollow.com. Check out all of the great things that they have. There are lots of videos in the playlist if you want to check those out as well. I'm going to put the code up here on the screen. Now this is for their 2025 sale, so I'll also have that down in the description box for you as well. So don't wait. Get your curriculum for next year early. Get a good deal on it, and I guarantee you will love this program just as much as we have. Thanks so much for joining me for today's video, everybody. I'll see you in the next one. And until then, have a